Greetings. I'm going to do a quick Bible study on the book of Matthew, chapter 1. We already went through the entire book of Genesis, and I said I was going to do Exodus, but the Holy Spirit moved my family to the book of Matthew, chapter 1. And basically, in Matthew chapter 1, you have what's called the generations of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Well, we haven't made it up to the story of David yet, but we have talked about Abraham and how Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judas and his brethren. And Judas begot Perez and Zerah of Tamar. And Perez begot Esrom, and Esrom begot Aram, and Aram begot Amadeb, and Amadeb begot Nasasan, and Nasasan begot Solomon. And we haven't talked about Solomon either. And Solomon is where we're going to stop. But basically, when I taught my kids about the first chapter of Matthew, I basically explained to them about the generations of Jesus Christ and how when you go through the Old Testament and you study all of those people who were in the Old Testament, you realize those same exact people who were in the Old Testament are named in the generations of Jesus Christ. And that's why the stories are there. That's why the stories exist about Abraham. That's why the stories exist about King David. That's when we get to King David. That's why all the stories exist. They exist basically because when you're studying the development of the Hebrew nations, how Abraham, the patriarchs, begot the nation of Israel, which is where we're at right now. Because when you go into Exodus, we're going into now the nation of Israel. A lot of people like to say, well, Exodus is about how, Moses came in and he led all the Israelites out of Egypt, which is true. Moses did come in. Moses did lead all the Israelites out of Egypt. But you have to realize that when Jacob died, you now have fundamentally a nation of people. There's no more patriarchs. There's only the 12 tribes. And later they'll be established as the 12 tribes. But right now they're the 12 sons of Israel who are having all of these children, and 12 kids having kids, that's a lot of kids. So you have these 12 boys having all of these children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, creating a nation in Egypt, a nation of Israelites in Egypt. Now, if you think about this. When we study about Joseph, we studied how his brothers sold him into slavery into Egypt, and how Joseph grew from a slave, as a foreigner, as a slave, to the title of second in command in Egypt. What would have happened to the Israelites if all that knowledge that Joseph gave Israel during the famine, he had given to the Israelites, if his brothers had not sold him into slavery? See, the information was still there. The blessing was still there. That's the blessing. The blessing that the brothers stole away from their own home was the God-given knowledge that God had instilled in Joseph. And Joseph took that knowledge and he prospered Egypt. If they had never sold him into slavery, Joseph would have took that knowledge and he would have prospered the Israelites. And the Israelites would have never been in Egypt. They would have been on their own land. They would have been prospering among themselves, and they would have never been slaves. Think about that. Is that a real possibility? Is that a real truth? Just think about that. In today's climate, you have to ponder real truths, real situations. You still have. God never took the blessing. You have it. Now that you have this blessing, what are you going to choose to do with it? So that's my segment for today. God bless.